Hi, everybody at the What's on It Elephant and Castle Facebook page. We are 1 minute early. And the reason we are 1 minute early is because me and Ben started to talk about Formula One, and I don't want to have two different conversations going. But joining us today is Ben Clark. And Ben's a young man who's been a cyclist and a football player and has a passion for sport. And I think, Ben, you're probably the youngest guest that we've had on here in a little while. You're 22 years old, so I'm super happy and excited that you can join us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit nervous, not gonna lie, but it's exciting. I mean, it's first public speaking I've done in a long time, but I'm really looking forward to it. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, me too. I think back to when I was your age, and you did just the nerves and things get a little bit kind of. But we're gonna forget about it. Forget about
yeah,
what I was like when I was your age. That was a long, long time ago. But we're gonna have a good conversation today, buddy. Let's get into the Formula One because I didn't see it over the weekend. And I know there's been a lot that's happened with signings with Mercedes this morning. But what was the Formula One like on Sunday? What was the race like?
it wasn't the greatest race to be fair, because Zandvoort. I mean, it's the first time it's been on the circuit, the calendar, sorry, since 1985. So it's a very twisty, fast, windy track, and the cars, the regulations that since like the turbo hybrid era, since 2014, it's very hard to follow. So there wasn't a lot of overtaking, but I mean, because obviously being in Holland and Max Verstappen, that was just, I can't imagine what it was like to be there. The amount of videos that I've seen of just, I mean, it was just a sea of orange, to be honest. It
Mm.
was really quite crazy to see. But I mean, it's made the championship race, or it's made it even more exciting because now Verstappen's back in the lead again. But yeah,
Yeah, do you know what? It was funny because I know he's got a 3 point lead over Hamilton, and this morning the newspapers were making it sound like that's some huge insurmountable gap.
yeah.
I know Red Bull has a little bit of an edge right now. I mean, they're on top of it right now, but I still you can never count out Lewis Hamilton.
Plus, it's Monza this weekend, and Monza has traditionally been like a Mercedes track because well, their power unit has always historically been the best. So I mean, Hamilton could win this weekend, just as Verstappen did last weekend, and overturn his own 3 point deficit because that was what it was going into Zandvoort. So I mean, like Christian Horner said, team principal of Red Bull, it's really going to go all the way to Abu Dhabi, the final race.
Mhm.
So it's just really exciting to be honest. I mean, I don't really remember a season like it, maybe 2016, but it is just really exciting.
It is really exciting. I'm glad that they're doing all that they can do to make it more exciting, and I suppose with Russell going to Mercedes now next year, it could be yeah. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, he's good. There's going to be no team orders there.
No, because obviously with Bottas, I mean, Bottas is fast, but he's not Hamilton fast. So
Mhm.
he's never been able to challenge for the championship. And obviously, team orders has been, well, that's why they replaced Nico Rosberg. Because, I mean, Russell could be like a repeat of Nico Rosberg in 2016. Hamilton and Rosberg came together on track quite a lot because they were so evenly matched. And obviously, Russell, the form that he showed in the Williams, I mean, in Belgium, for example, he put his Williams qualified at second, which is
Mm.
just sort of unheard of in the last few years, the pace they've been at. So next year could be really feisty with obviously Hamilton and Russell and Verstappen still at Red Bull and the new regulations coming. It should make the racing even more exciting. So it's good times really. The sport's in a good place. So
It is. I've been a fan for about 30 years since I moved to the UK, and I've always really liked Formula One. But and I understand why, when I got in it, it was like the Ayrton Senna, Damon
yeah,
Hill kind of battles, and that was what really kind of pulled me in right away is these battles. And I know for the last 7 years, Mercedes has been really, really dominant. When did you get involved into really liking the sport? How do you end up liking Formula One?
I mean, my first memory, because obviously like football is my main sport. I can first memory of that 2005. But first memory of Formula One was probably Brazil 2008, which was when Hamilton won his first title. Um, Last corner. It's probably like one of the most iconic races and most iconic incidents ever. After that, I sort of don't have the strongest memory. I'm not sure why, because I probably watched it, but then the next sort of memory is sort of Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, which is
Mm.
2012, because Vettel won the first four titles of the last decade. Um, but and then since then, really, since about 2012, I just say I've been hooked. Yeah, obviously Mercedes has just been dominant, but it's still been exciting because they've been like seasons like 2018 when it was Vettel, Hamilton, battling for the title. So yeah, I just like to see people like pushing limits really and pushing boundaries, which is what Mercedes and other teams have done. So
you like MotoGP too, right?
yeah, I went to my first race at Silverstone last weekend, not the weekend just gone, but the weekend before, which was really good. A lot louder than I expected. Not sure why, but yeah.
Yeah. Is Valentino Rossi still riding?
Yeah, his last season, he announced his retirement um, just during the summer break, which was last month. So, I mean, he's 42 years old and he's still riding, and everybody still wants to beat him. It was just amazing as well because obviously on his Instagram and everybody, because he's like the most famous rider ever, really. You've got all the other riders on the grid sharing pictures of them as a child taken with Valentino Rossi when he was racing, and obviously now they're racing him. It just shows like the longevity and how long he's been at the top of the sport, which is just crazy.
But he's a character. I'm not. I mean, I do follow a little bit of MotoGP. I've seen the odd race, and I do remember. I don't know if he won a championship or a race, but one of his family or someone came out with a chicken, a live chicken.
Yeah,
yeah, and he rode around with it, didn't he?
It's a lot. I mean, because he sort of dominated like the 2000s, and there have been a lot of celebrations.
Yeah,
I can't remember if it was him or Lorenzo that jumped into a swimming pool after winning a race. He was the one that he also went into like a porta potty at the side of a track after winning a race. I think that's why he's so loved as well, because he's a character, and obviously sport needs characters. All sports need characters, and yeah, I mean, he just does the most random things, but he can because he's that good. So
yeah. Ben, what was your involvement with, like, I know you're a keen cyclist too. What about, I mean, it's great being a fan of sports, but what about activities? What sports have you played, and how did you get involved in them?
I mean, my main sport was, and probably still is, football. I played probably up until about the age of 19, really, and I started to get involved. I got involved in that because, I mean, my whole family, we're all Arsenal fans. We've all played football. So yeah, when I was a teenager as well, I played for AFC Wimbledon Academy, which is probably the highest level that I've got to, which was pretty good. That was about 13, 14. Then I sort of fell out of love with the game a little bit, just because of like the pressure and how serious it was taken. It just sort of stopped being fun. I also got quite a bad back injury because I grew quite quickly. But yeah, and then that was when I turned to cycling, and since then I don't know, it's just quite nice to sort of go out and ride my bike, just sense of freedom, really.
You talk about falling out of love with football. What was it like to be in love with football? What were those memories like?
It was just, I mean, because I sort of got that feeling back now, just playing with my mates. But that's what it was. Even like sort of playing with, well, competitively with your team. It was just nice to sort of go out and just play, just enjoy the game, to, well, compete and win. Really, it was probably the best sort of, I don't know, it was the best time of my young life. But it was just to be part of a team and compete and support each other.
Camaraderie is like, I think a lot of people forget about, like, you're part of a team, but are you there to win, or are you there to connect with other guys so that you can experience and play the game? And I know with so many sports nowadays, the enjoyment of what actually gets us involved in the first place, which is, I remember, Ben, I think maybe we talked about it last week, or maybe it's something that came up in between us talking, but my earliest memories of sport was playing, I'm from the middle of nowhere in Canada, and everything's frozen in the wintertime. And my earliest memories of really just having so much fun with the sport that I completely lost track of time. I would miss dinners. My dad would have to drive to the ice rink to pick me up at like 9 o'clock at night, going, where your mom's made dinner for you, and it's gone cold, and you've upset your mom. And me and one buddy just sitting there playing ice hockey late in the night, and just going, oh, sorry, I just completely lost track of time, because we got so enthralled in like challenging each other to, play these different kind of games and to beat each other one-on-one, and just having fun and rolling around on the ice and just laughing at the things that we would do. And it was just pure enjoyment, but that's what sports were for me. We're playing. And even to the point where I got into the part where I got paid to play the game that I really, really super loved. There was still a lot of enjoyment. And I think it's probably just a bit of a generation gap where now There's so much seriousness, especially to the youngsters, like even the 7 and 8 year olds. It's like, there's so much pressure put on them where they're forgetting about the beauty of playing. Can you talk to your experience about playing it, and then all of a sudden when the pressure getting into academy football kind of disillusioned the enjoyment of the game?
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, I was only sort of 12, 13 years old, and all of a sudden, I mean, I can understand obviously at that level taking it seriously, but it's not at that age, it's not about winning. It's sort of just about learning and progressing. And well, it just didn't need to be taken the way it was really. It was just,
Mm.
it's just, well, it should still, even like you said, when you're self playing professionally, you still want to have that enjoyment. You still just want to sort of go out there and have fun. It doesn't need to have all these rules or all these styles of play or just complicating the game. Even especially at my age when I was there, it was just about learning and playing. But it was taken a level up from that. It was just,
Mm.
yeah, it was just, like I said, too serious, really.
Yeah, like I remember hearing some news reports of, when it would, I don't know how old you would have been, but when David Beckham, you know, 20 years ago, and you get a young David Beckham and all the young Manchester United young guns playing, and they started getting paparazzi outside of clubs
Yeah,
in London, and all of a sudden, and then people, and then the money, from the time that Alan Shearer got sold for 3 million, which was like astronomical then,
yeah,
the advent of the Premiership and everything. Since then, there was actually there was this, like I say, there was this. I don't know if it was a BBC News or whatever, but they were asking kids at school what they want to be when they grown up, because they saw these glamorous pictures of, like I say, David Beckham coming out with a Spice Girl on his arm of the
yeah,
clubs, and kids are going, I want to be a professional footballer. I want to be a professional footballer. Like it all of a sudden became this thing that they wanted to attain. And then they were like, well, what level do you play at? And well, I don't play yet.
yeah.
So, there was all these people trying to be what they thought a professional football player had without even talking about the sport.
I think it's got even worse from that as such, because obviously social media and everything just inflates everything. And like you said, the money back then was astronomical, and now it's, well, if you said it astronomical
Ooh,
back then, you just can't even imagine what it is now. Can't There isn't a word to describe it.
yeah.
Then you see obviously all their lifestyles and that through social media, and you ask a question to young boys and young girls now, saying, "Would you want to be a professional footballer?" And like you said, a lot of them haven't even kicked the ball, or just you
Yeah.
can just tell, like, not to be mean or anything, but you can tell when you're watching that they just don't have that level to go to. But obviously they see it all
Mm.
through social media and think, yeah, that's what I want to do. And they're just that there are other things that you can sort of fulfill your life with. And like I said, it's all about enjoyment. You find something that you enjoy and stick to it and do it for the rest of your life. That would be the ideal sort of
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, the skills that and the people skills, the belonging, that those were the things that I mean, I had some great seasons playing ice hockey over here where we won everything and it was awesome. But it was like the laughing and the joking in the changing room.
Yeah, it's what you remember, isn't it? It's what you
That's the bit
remember.
that you remember.
Yeah,
Yeah. I can't tell you like what goals were scored when, or,
yeah,
what games were won and lost, but I do remember that camaraderie in the changing
because
room.
it's the connections you build for the rest of your life, isn't it? I mean, imagine you probably still keep in contact with players that you
You
used to
know,
play with.
yeah, it's funny. I do now, and I'm 50
Yeah,
years old, and I haven't played a professional game in oh geez, I think 1997 or 1998. So that's a long, long time, almost 25 years. And I went through a time then that when I stopped playing the sport, I really became isolated, and I
yeah,
I went into a really bad space, and we didn't get paid a lot of money. We got a few £100 a week. It wasn't the kind of money that professional footballers got or get or got
yeah,
at any time. But it was this thing of like, I always say to guys that when you stop playing, the bereavement, the loss is still the same.
yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're playing at Old Highbury or the Emirates, or because I know you're an Arsenal fan and so am
Yeah,
I. We should probably keep that really quiet the
yeah.
way that things are going
Please do.
nowadays. But
Please do. No, I'm
or
joking.
or where I played on the Isle of Wight in front of like 1,200 people, were in a packed little arena where people were just going crazy. The feelings that you had on the ice or on those pitch are still the same for that
Yeah,
individual. And I found that the loss of I put me into a really bad space. And in only coming through that I've managed to connect to a few old teammates. And we get to, there was some rivalries in the changing room, and there was some, like, not everyone got along, but certainly now that we've all stopped playing for a while, like the bonds are really strong,
Yeah,
and the love and compassion for one another too, because a lot of us have been through life that now. Like when you're in your 20s, you don't really experience a lot of heartache. Well, I didn't, and it wasn't until I stopped playing, and then life happened.
yeah,
But yeah, the bonds from teammates is so important, and those are the things that why I would say for kids to get involved in team sport is not to try and play in the Premiership. You got a better chance of winning the lottery,
exactly. Yeah, for a lot
but
of
to
people.
get
Yeah,
the skills that people like you have learned, and have taken you to where you are, today, which is this guy who just loves sports, right?
exactly, exactly. Love watching it, loves being involved. It's just all about, like I said, making connections and the memories that you make. I mean, I just, like you said, being in the changing room with other people, and yeah, there are a lot of, like, I can't really remember many games, but looking back, I can sort of remember the memories after those games because of, well, the happy feelings associated with them, and things after training, just sort of the banter that you have is,
Mm,
yeah, that's one
yeah.
something that I do miss, to be fair, playing football. But I sort of get that
Yeah.
now, just playing with friends, because I've known them like through school years and that, and that's what I enjoy. So
I think that's the great thing about football. You just need a ball.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Although
matter
there's
how
a
old you are. Like you said,
oh
you can just go out and play on the green, and you sort of forget everything. You're still like that young kid that, well, might miss dinner or
yeah.
just lose complete track of time.
Yeah. Apart from the fact that there's so many of those signs saying no ball games allowed here, that
Oh,
really bugs
yeah.
me.
I mean, there's, well, one out on the green, but you never sort of listen to it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny because the people who enforce that and are like, "You kids stop playing ball," they're the ones that were probably banging balls off of windows and gutterings and stuff
of
like that when
course.
they were kids. We just
They did it when
forget.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Forget what it's like. I don't, yeah. They should come out and play with us, or should have
yeah,
come out and played with
exactly,
us.
exactly.
Yeah,
With their Zimmer frames.
yeah.
You got into cycling after football. How did that come around?
Uh, well, because like I said, I mean, I had a bad back injury
Hmm.
from football that just I couldn't really play. Well, I couldn't play for a few years, but I could cycle, so it was just sort of finding another sport. And again, I mean, speaking of my dad and my family, they'd always been into football. My dad had done a lot of cycling. I mean, he did Land's End to John O'Groats, which is sort of bottom of England to top of Scotland over five
Hmm.
days, and he'd always done a lot. So I just guess sort of followed in my dad's footsteps and saw it as the next logical option to go to. And that sort of took me out to America as well when I went on a study abroad year, which was really exciting because it's the first cycling I've ever done in a different country. So,
Tell me about going abroad and studying for a year. How did that happen, and where did you go?
I had the option. I mean, I did well at uni in my first year, and then the option came about in my second year because I was sort of carrying on the progress from my first year, and had the option to go to California because they have like this whole reciprocity program where they take students from England and vice versa. They send some over here. Um, yeah, and the option came up to go to UCLA. So I
Wow.
sort of applied, got in, and took my bike and studied a bit, but mostly cycled, joined the cycling team. And it was just, that's probably the best team that I've ever been a part of, to be fair,
Hmm.
because it was just so
Really?
supportive. And so, yeah, they're just people were so kind. And it didn't matter sort of where you were, like in a race, because that was the first time I'd ever raced. They'd always just be cheering you on. They'd be the loudest team there. So,
I wonder why that is. Is it just the environment around cycling?
uh, potentially maybe because it's not as serious as, well, it's not taken as seriously as football. I don't know. You always see maybe they just copied people on the TV because obviously you always see like the Tour de France and see spectators just cheering everybody on. But it was just genuinely a lovely bunch of people to be a part of, to be working with and be teammates to. So
I think a lot of people think of cycling as being an individual sport because you always see guys training by themselves, but it is a team sport, right?
as soon as you get into a race or anything like that, you're sort of, like you're working for each other, you're pulling each other, you're just encouraging each other. Even with people from other teams, if you're say in a breakaway, like you get in a break at the front of the race and there's four of you each from a different team, it's all about supporting each other to see if you can stay away from the rest everybody else. It's only when you get close to the line that it becomes individual again. But
Mm.
yeah.
And maybe there's some kind of connection too, because I remember when I was a kid, I used to like cycling, and I used to love motorsports. And I think that that was because I was young and I couldn't drive anything with an engine. Like, the cyclist was a bike was the nearest best thing, right?
That's probably a good point because I mean, again, well, all three, my dad, my two brothers, both ride motorcycles, and I don't. I haven't got my license. Probably something that I'll do one day. So I guess I saw cycling as the logical option. Well, not trying to keep up with them or anything because that would be impossible. But yeah, it's just something that two wheels and just the same sense of freedom that you just go out, put on a helmet, and go wherever you really want to.
Hmm. If your mom is going to hear this, tell her that you just say you're not interested in getting a motorcycle.
No, she'd probably question me a lot. Not after my two brothers and my dad. Not
Yeah,
with all of them. Yeah, good point
yeah,
actually.
yeah. No, no, no motorcycles, Ben.
No, no more,
No,
no more for her.
no.
She's been through all of that.
Yeah. That's funny too about what parents go through for with kids. It's something that I've started to see now as I coach youngsters in ice hockey, and I don't know how you know what your parents are like, but I get to see different types of parents, and the parents who are very supportive and kind of just sit back and they watch little Johnny or little Susie play the game, and then there's like these parents that are sitting there and yelling and screaming at their kids. And I wonder, like when parents are actually going to kind of be given tools on what it's like to go and watch their kids play sports, because a lot of them are trying to live vicariously through their children, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, I was lucky because it was always the former. It was always the first. My mum and dad always supportive. I mean, they'd drive for hours just to take me to a match or a training session or things like that. But they would never shout from the touchline. They'd never sort of because it can be a lot of pressure. I mean, it's a
Mm,
pressure already when you're sort of playing at academy level or elite level. But when you have sort of the pressure of your mum and dad, especially two people that you really don't want to disappoint, you just don't want to sort of hear them shouting or be disappointed from the touchline. So I was quite fortunate that my mum and dad always supported me and were never trying to coach me or instruct me from the touchline.
mm. I actually I'm kind of serious too about the point that I wish that some parents would look more into the psychology and the mindset of younger children, and what it takes for a younger person to be able to learn. Because Ben, like I know I told you a little bit about like Tough and Tender in the program that we're writing with Dr. Misha Jarvis, and she's teaching me a lot about the neurological the way the brain is set up when you're 8 years old compared to when you're 12 years old compared to when you're 16, 18, 22, 25. And one of the things that I heard a lot growing up in the sports that I played is that there's no crying in ice hockey, or there was no crying in football, or there was no crying in baseball. And you're telling this to like an 8-year-old kid. And when I talked to Dr. Jarvis about this, she said, that's a form of abuse, because an 8-year-old child has an enlarged amygdala, which is where our emotions come from. And they're designed to cry because
Yeah,
that's their way of communicating. And we're telling an 8-year-old that crying is wrong, or there's no crying in sport, is actually a form of abuse.
yeah,
And when she explained it to me like that, I've taken a complete and utter different look to anyone a child who might be crying, and really supporting them through their tears and saying, your tears are welcome.
yeah.
Cry it out. Let's talk,
Because
rather than making the person feel bad about crying.
yeah, because it's all about learning. Really, it's something that they learn from. Again, I mean, to be fair or to be honest, parents. I mean, the best lesson that parents, I personally think I can't, or I'm not a parent, but the best lesson or what I would like to have heard is just to have been told, enjoy it. Like,
Mm,
because you learn a lot from your mum and dad. You take their advice always, really. Just if they've just gone out and said, enjoy it, go and enjoy exactly what you're doing, then you sort of, I guess you'd always have that mentality throughout all the times that you've been playing. So
mm,
if there's anything that I think parents and that should say, rather than sort of pressuring their kids or telling them exactly what to do, just go out and say enjoy it, play like you're playing in the park, or play like
mm.
you're playing with your friends. Just go out and enjoy it and see what happens from there.
Yeah. Exactly. Go and enjoy, and
Yeah,
and even shouting encouragement is just absolutely
exactly.
wonderful and
Yeah,
supportive. But shouting instructions too. This is something I completely learned, Ben. Is that, let's say you're on a pitch with 22 other children running around, and there's screaming, there's yelling for passes, there's a referee that might be like blowing off calls, and then there's got to be 22. Well, like let's say there's 22 different parents out around the edge, maybe even 40, because people might be bringing the partner too, and the coaches, and then the coaches are yelling instructions, the referees yelling instructions, and there's this 8-year-old Ben trying to run down the wing and figure out how to kick the ball while running. So your brain's trying to figure that out, and then you've got a ref that you're trying to listen to, a coach you're trying to listen to, but you're designed, and this is something again that I learned from Dr. Jarvis, you're designed to hear your parents' voice ahead of everybody else's.
Yeah.
So you will hear your dad or your mom yelling, shoot the ball, while you're trying to figure out how to even put one foot in front of another, because you're trying to figure out all these things of how your muscles are learning, and it puts the children off. And I didn't know that until I learned this, is that we need to be either not yelling, or once a play is ended, we can yell encouragement.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there are ways to do it as well. Fair enough. I mean, sort of if a parent's seen not something that's wrong or something that they think their child can improve, don't shout it out in the match. Maybe take them after the game, sit down with them, and just have like a constructive conversation if they think they can, because then the child will listen, and then at the next training session, at the next match, they'll think about what the parent's saying and go into it and try and implement it, rather than hearing all these different voices, like you said, at the same time and not know what to do. So if they just sort of took them to the side at the end of the game and just had a calm conversation, said, no, this is what you did well, this is what I think you could improve on, it would just be nice to hear.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing, is we're all kind of armchair experts, and it doesn't matter if we're like, five-a-side football or Hackney Marshes, or, at one of we're always yelling instructions to these players when, who are we to be telling, when Thierry Henry should shoot or pass, right?
Yeah.
Is Thierry Henry before your time?
No. Thierry Henry I was lucky enough to sort of see, like I said, my first memory of Arsenal was 2005. So 2005 to, I can't remember when he left to go to Barcelona, but about 2008, 2009. But even then, I can sort of see all the memories through TV.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been an Arsenal fan since I moved here in 1989.
Love that.
They won the double in 89. I was born in 1971. They won a double then. I lived in Highbury. And when I started working for Sky Sports, I actually got to hang out with Ian Wright. So he became a buddy of mine. So
he must have been, the personality on Ian Wright is just second to none. He must just be great company.
He is one of the nicest fellas. I know him, and I met Lee Dixon a few times, and they are both just, man, we always get these perceptions of what these athletes are like. But honestly, Ian Wright is one of the most genuine, kind, and just lovely guys I've ever met.
Well, it's that video as well. I don't know. Do you know the video when he sees, it's at Highbury, but when he sees his former PE teacher, I think Mr. Pigden, and he just breaks down into tears. It's that, I don't know, it just always gets me as well. And it sort of gives you an insight into, because he's like a very emotional person as well. And it's like, it's with sport, you don't usually see that, but it is quite nice to see.
Well, he's an example of like saying crying is, we're designed to cry.
Exactly.
Why do we have tear ducts, right? Why do we have these emotions? And I think that's one of the things that I work on a lot with guys is with men is showing our emotions is not a sign of weakness.
Exactly.
If we're designed to do it, then do it. And crying, I always feel better after I have a cry. And and again, Ian Wright is just a perfect example of someone who's been through a lot, who understands that holding in these emotions are just not good for our bodies or our souls. But the other thing, Ben, that I found, that when I see somebody get emotional, I trust them.
Yeah.
Because they're being vulnerable.
And it shows they genuinely care as well about what they're doing and what they're talking about and what they're involved in. So
exactly, and vulnerability, I think, is such a huge character building thing. It's where somebody, why do we always have to put on these pretenses of being tough, and saying things are okay when they're not?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't answer that question. I have no idea. If everybody opened themselves up, it would just be, I guess, a lot kinder, really.
Exactly. And are you too young for the Rocky series? Do you watch Rocky?
No, I've seen all of the films, especially
Yeah.
Rocky 4. I think I've seen that about 10 times, not gonna lie. But yeah,
Rocky Four is a perfect example
yeah,
because he's got, remember, I don't know if you remember, but when Rocky, they got the money, they're in the mansion. He doesn't need to go to Russia,
no,
but I think it's when what's his wife's name? I'm having a brain. Um,
Adrian,
Adrian.
I could,
When
yeah,
Adrian's at the
yeah,
top of the stairs and he's like looking up at her, and you know, it's that the way the shot is him looking up at his
yeah,
wife, and he's like, and he goes, "I'm scared," you
yeah,
know. And I was like, wow, Rocky will face his biggest demons, but he'll admit that he's scared.
yeah,
And for me, I think that that's one of the best traits of Rocky is that he'll cry, you
yeah,
know, he'll show his emotions and he'll say that he's scared, you know, and he always wins.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the classic underdog that shows
yeah,
vulnerability again. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. um, okay, so now, Ben, you're a cycle, you've played football, you know, you're a young man who's experienced a lot of stuff, who actually really loves sports. And then you're now trying to turn that into you know, building a platform for people to come to. Can you explain what the platform is, first of all?
Yeah, so I've just recently, well, last month, probably going about a month now, built a website, a sports website that I publish a range of articles, whether that be news, previews and predictions, ratings and reviews, and like features and opinions. I publish a range of articles. At the moment, it's only on football, Formula One, and MotoGP. Those are the three sports that I'm focused on. I'd love to expand because obviously do watch a lot of other sports, but it's just a bit difficult trying because it's only me writing at the moment.
Mm.
So it's quite a lot of work, but I'm just publishing a lot of articles on those three sports and trying to get into sports journalism. Really, that's the whole purpose behind it.
It's a very competitive market.
Yeah,
You know, sport is part of our culture. It's our ideologies. It's our beliefs. It's you know, it's just interwoven in the fabric of our society. What makes you want to get into, you know, that at a journalistic level where again it's very competitive, and what do you think, you know, will set you apart and from other people that you're competing against?
I mean, on the second part first, that's the whole purpose behind the website because I'm not really sure how many people can say that they built their own website, can say that because it just shows how committed I am to sports journalism. Really, I've never done anything, or I'd never done anything like that before. So to build a website from scratch and then publish, I mean, 3 or 4, sometimes 5 articles daily, I just think that is what sets me apart from other people. Because, like I said, I don't think
Mhm.
many people have done that. But in terms of why I want to get into it, I mean, as we've sort of spoken about before, sport's been pretty much my whole life. And obviously, I wasn't good enough and I didn't quite have, well, I wouldn't have quite the ability or the mentality to make it at a professional level. So I sort of see this as the next best thing, just to be involved in sport in whatever capacity and in a capacity that I enjoy. That's the goal.
The last year, everyone's been kind of constrained, a year and a half, sorry, everyone's been constrained to, you know, different lockdowns at different times. And for sure, exercise was like, you know, every time I put on Instagram or Facebook, somebody was coming up with a new exercise or 30-day challenges, and everything from yoga to, you know, I love the knees over toes guy, and you know,
Yeah,
all these different things. But you know, the one thing was that people were missing was connection and team sport. Why do you think it's so important? I know we've talked a lot about that accountability and a sense of belonging, but like, was there something particularly in you that you felt that you were missing over the last year and a half, and not being able to either go cycling with your buddies or go out onto the green across and kick a ball around?
uh, I guess as well is that it's an escape, really, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people face difficulties and things on a daily basis, especially last year and a half, like you said. So to have everything opened up again, it's sort of just that an hour or two where you can just go away and forget about your problems, not have to deal with problems, come back to them later, come back refreshed. It does a lot for your mental health as well, obviously,
Yeah.
and just puts you in a much fresher state of mind when you come back to face said problems.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that you never ever see when kids are playing kick around is this.
No, exactly. That is very true. That is a great point because I mean, that was sort of 10, 15 years ago. I didn't have a phone or anything. And like I said, I'd just go out on the green behind my house and with a few neighbors and that, and just knock a ball about for hours on end. And that way as well, you're never comparing yourself, because I think that's sort of a fundamental flaw with social media, is you're always sort of comparing yourself to people that have it all, because it's just a very narrow insight into somebody's lifestyle. So yeah.
Do you compare yourself to other people on
Uh,
social media?
I guess I compare myself to, I'd like to say no, but maybe it's sort of just hardwired into everybody. I try not to, especially people that have sort of made it and have it all really. Yeah.
Like, do you feel
Yeah.
pressure on you? Like, you're 22, you're a young man. Like, there's all these. I know that everyone talks about a lot of young women who are going through like a lot of issues with regards to eating disorders, body issue problems, because of, I don't know, said Kardashians who said that you need to look a certain way,
Yeah.
and that you use a certain makeup and stuff. What about a young man, 22 years old? Do you experience any pressures?
I think the main pressure, whether this be through comparing myself to other people, or just sort of like the mindset that I've always had. I mean, because obviously I graduated in the summer, and I always thought that sort of once I'd finished my degree, I'd just have a job to go straight into. And it has been quite difficult, I'm not gonna lie, sort of not having a job, because obviously the website, now I've found the website, I'm loving the process, but not having a job felt to me like a failure. I just felt like I was 22 years old, didn't have a job upon graduating. I just felt like I wasn't really going anywhere. And then obviously that's when I sort of turned to sports journalism as well. And now that
Mm.
I'm building a website, it's given me purpose. And I'm, like I said, I'm loving the process. But it did, for a little while after I graduated, I did struggle a little bit.
Mm. Where do you think you were, like, the struggle? Was it coming from pressure that your parents put on you, or society, or yourself?
It's never my parents, because my parents have always been supportive no matter what. I think it's a mixture of society and myself. I guess that's where I do compare myself to people, because obviously I see friends and things that have jobs, and I'm thinking, I just want that. Like, why have you got a job and I haven't got a job? That's not meant in a nasty sort of way, or I just think, I mean, I just think I should be in the same position, and it feels like I feel
Mm.
like a bit of a failure for not, or I did feel like a bit of a failure for not being in the same position. But then also, there are a lot of friends that I have that are in the same position as me. So I guess also that's where it comes to the pressure that I place on myself. Obviously, living in a pandemic, the job market is pretty hard. Um, it I wasn't. It was very difficult to get a job. So I guess I shouldn't have had that notion that I'd be able to walk straight into a job. It's a bit naive to have that notion that I'd be able to walk straight into a job upon graduating.
Yeah. And also, like, I suppose it is depending on, you want the job that you want to have for the rest of your life, or just a
Yeah,
job to kind of feel like you're doing something positive and making an impact, or just doing a job where you can make some money to go buy some cool trainers, right?
yeah, and well, that's why
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that I'm sort of sports journalism now, because I know that that's what
Yeah.
I want to do for the rest of my life. Before, which is also again why I felt like a bit of a failure. Before I was applying to, I couldn't tell you how many jobs I was applying to. I just wanted something to have to sort of prove that I wasn't a failure to myself. But now that I've actually found something that I really am genuinely passionate about, hence why I built the website, it's
Mm.
good. I just feel like I'm in a much better place. So.
On the website, like, in terms of content, like, are you thinking about doing like a YouTube channel as well, and
That would be
going
the
out and doing
next.
interviews, talking
That
to
would
some
be the
cool people?
next step. Yeah, I mean, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm constantly editing the website and things. But now most of it is set up, and now I have like a good workflow pattern, writing articles. It's about going into the YouTube world after that. Because I mean, the ideal job, you see people getting paid to talk about football on YouTube, and I just think, or other sports as well. But like my knowledge is pretty good on a range of sports, and I just think if I could be paid to sort of talk about sport, yeah, it'd be unreal, to be honest. So
I think, I agree. I mean, being able to get paid to talk about sport was like my dream come true.
yeah,
Fortunately, I got involved in a time when you can actually make phone calls to broadcasters and kind of worm your way in. Nowadays,
yeah,
like, producers are literally guarded, by people, so that people can't phone them, because there's so many people trying to get into this crowded market. But I
yeah,
think you're on the right path would be to create your own content and to interview the people that you want to interview.
Yeah.
Who would be on your hit list of people to interview apart from Valentino, Rossi, and Lewis Hamilton? But
Uh,
who do you think would be cool to talk to?
I mean, straight away, the first one would be Arsene Wenger, talking of Arsenal, because it would
Oh
just
wow,
be
yeah.
to, especially because obviously you could talk about the success, but then you could talk about the second half of his reign as well, which obviously was a success, but that was when the pressure from fans ratcheted up. So
Mm.
I'd love to know, I mean, he has spoken about it before, but really sort of delve into his mind about how he dealt with the pressure and what he thought about what the fans said to him, if he thought about that, if he paid much attention. Because obviously you see a
Mm.
lot on social media criticizing him back when he was still in charge. So it must have been really quite difficult to deal with. So I'd love to know his thoughts behind it.
Me too, because he seemed to have a guy who had a vision for an overall picture, not just to Arsenal, right? But an overall picture of like if everyone were to operate a club with the budgets that we do at Arsenal, if everyone did it, the league would be better. Everyone would prosper. It would be more competitive.
Yeah,
But I think the fear and the money that went into Chelsea and Man City and Manchester United, you know, they just they were never going to listen to a guy like Arsene Wenger. You know, he
no,
had this altruistic approach to it rather than this kind of the success of one club. He was like the success of many would
yeah.
be better than the success of one.
But it's probably why, because I think he's done a lot of work with UEFA or FIFA since he
Mm.
left Arsenal, which is probably one of the best roles for him. I mean, that or a national team role, because you can govern the rules of football as such. And like you said, he's always had the best interest of the game at
Yeah, of
heart.
the game. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that
He's got this really interesting proposal now, which is a World Cup every 2 years. What do you think of that?
I think 3 years. So you could have, obviously, I mean, speaking from the European side of things, so you could have the European Championships, World Cup, and then a rest year, and then just have that on a cycle. And then you could sort
Mhm.
of, you'd have to align, obviously, all the other continental tournaments. But I think every 2 years would be a bit much because, I mean,
Mm.
professional footballers, they do need a break in the summer, like every so often. So three
Yeah.
years with a break here, I think would be the best option.
Do you think that the globe will ever get its seasons into one thing? Because I know the MLS in the States, they play in North America, they play at different times of the year. You know, we obviously play from, August to March, April. Do you think that they'll want to try to make it like football a summer sport? Because I know that there's been talks of that to
Uh,
align themselves with the MLS.
Potentially, it's probably that again comes sort of down to money and things because I mean, especially when we talk about the European Super League and things, if they can find a market that increases TV revenue even more, whether that be um, changing into a different season, then potentially, but that would be met with a lot of uproar from fans
Oh,
who just love like the traditional side of things. So
yeah.
not anytime soon.
No, you're right. I mean, that's the thing is like I'm pro technology, but the way they've implemented, technology in the last couple of years it just hasn't felt right or that it worked.
No,
And then there's like the purists that say no technology, but I think that it enhances the game. It just has to be used right. I'm
it,
also pro the evolution of the game of but it's going to be very, very hard to change.
yeah, because obviously there had been quite, I mean, different sort of rules floating about. I mean, I remember one was like changing the time limit to 60 minutes, but you stop the clock every time the
Mm,
ball goes out, which I think is an interesting proposition. But like you said, it would just be met with such opposition. I
yeah.
think, well, it's always, like you said, always, the game should always be tried to improve. But you'd have to people should have like sort of be open-minded to allow it to happen in the first place as a trial. I mean, you can see it as a
Yeah.
trial, but obviously a lot of people don't even want that. They just think anything like that, and the game is changing as they know it. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, hey, it all started by saying that we couldn't use hands 100 odd years ago,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and look
So,
how far we've
the
come since
evolution,
then.
exactly. So,
Yeah,
I've been to that pub. I think it's called the Masonic. It's near the Masonic Lodge in Covent Garden,
yeah,
where they actually sat, and I want to say 1829 or 1849 or something like that. And they actually went, "Hey, let's not use hands in football." And then
very nice.
in the game, yeah.
Yeah,
So I think we have to be open to change, but there are those guys that in the top end of football stadiums that are like, "You're not changing our
never.
game." No.
I mean, like, so you saw it with the European Super League, which I think obviously the fan
Yeah,
reaction to that was brilliant. Don't get me wrong, but you saw any sort of changes, any major changes to football, and you'd
yeah.
see the same reaction, really.
But funny enough, 30 years ago, there was a breakaway league called the
Yeah,
Premiership.
I mean, obviously because I wasn't alive back then, but well, I don't know what the reaction like was to it. I think my dad said there was still opposition back then.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a good documentary on BBC at the moment. I think I missed the first episode last night, but they're talking about
yeah,
sort of the rise, the evolution of the birth, and then the evolution of the Premier League. Um, but yeah, opposition to it, and back then, but now everybody loves it. So
yeah, yeah. Ben, quickly, what's going to be you over the next few months? What are you going to be doing?
website, really, just continue
Yeah.
building the website, start my own YouTube channel, try and get some content up there, and go from there.
Well, we will talk offline more because I think that
Yeah,
we'll be able to support each other in you doing what you're doing, and I'd love you to kind of help us do some stuff too. So
yeah. Thanks for
it's been
having me
great
on this
talking
as
with
well,
you,
by the
man.
way. Yeah, thank you. It's been really good, most enjoyable.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah,
And thanks everybody at the What's on at Elephant and Castle. Don't forget to join me Thursday at 11 a.m. for our Tough and Tender workshop. See you all then. See you later, Ben.
thank you. Bye.
Bye, buddy.